SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Looking for an affordable new home? Wyndham Mobile Homes is what you need. Discover all our spacious models, perfect for every lifestyle. Your dream home is waiting. Visit Wyndham Mobile Homes in Corinth today or online at wyndham-homes.com.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy.
Okay, help me out here. Is this like a Mondayist Tuesday or a Tuesdayist Monday?
It's definitely a Mondayist Tuesday.
Okay. Oh, my gosh, we got it. It is a shortened week due to the Labor Day holiday, and a good one it was, a long weekend. It'll be a while till we have another one of them, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it was still good, fun. Weather was decent, a little warm, a little rain mixed in there as well. But overall,
it's hard to beat the weather on Friday.
Yeah, it was awesome, wasn't it? Wow. Played a little golf late in the day. Didn't even sweat that much. Little less humid. And then, of course, we had lots of football over the weekend. And in fact, we're going to break it down at 11:05. J.T. Mitchell, news director, SuperTalk Mississippi News, and Michael Borky, the host of Sports Talk Mississippi, right here in the Element Wealth Studio, talking about football across the Magnolia State. At 12:05, it's Captain Criss Turnipseed. You know him. He's the director of the Mississippi Highway Patrol Public Affairs Division. He'll give us an update on how we did over the Labor Day holiday. Lots of travel. Of course, gas prices to the chagrin of the Democrats, lowest since 2020. And I think that spurred lots of driving, enjoying the beautiful country that we live in, and seemed like the roads. I headed up to Oxford on Saturday, of course, for the game, which was for the most part a snoozer, honestly. But it's one of those things, Rhino, where you have an opponent that shouldn't be able to hang with you on the field, and if they do, you get worried. But I didn't come away with that sentiment, because the Rebels prevailed in momentous style there, as they should. Great game down at the Rock at Southern Miss. The visiting Mississippi State Bulldogs took care of business. I don't know that I was too terribly surprised at the outcome. I was surprised, however, at last night's game in North Carolina. North Carolina and TCU, the Horned Frogs, visiting Chapel Hill. Bill Belichick, head coach of the Tar Heels, he looked a bit confused the whole game to me. I don't know, anytime they showed him on the sidelines, but they got it handed to him there in an upset.
Was it confusion, or was it the typical Bill Belichick, I'm not going to make a face no matter what happens?
It could be. Yeah, it could be. I don't know. He just looked perplexed the whole time, but that may just be the way he looks. Your money not doing well this morning. The Dow down 439 points. The NASDAQ also down over 300 a moment ago. And then oil, it is trending upward, now over $65 a barrel, going in the wrong direction if you want lower prices at the pump. And the reason for the sell-off, a couple of things. If you look historically, short weeks typically aren't good for markets. And it's thought, the theory is the machines take over because fewer humans are in the office to kind of guard and mitigate against doing anything crazy and radical. So right now, the machines are consuming all of the information, and they ain't happy, and they're selling off. The main thing is the courts on Friday, after you and I left, have struck down and ruled that the president does not have the exclusive authority to impose all these various tariffs. Not all of them, but a good number of them. This is going to be an issue, I feel, that will be settled at the Supreme Court level. Now, this was a federal court. I can't remember the tally of the vote exactly, but I did note that I think all of the judges on this court were appointed by Biden or Obama, if I'm not mistaken. What was it?
7-4 vote.
7-4. Okay. Couldn't remember if it was. I thought may have been 9-2, but it was 7-4. Okay. So I think that's where it's headed, to the old Supreme Court, for them to sort it out. Maybe we can get our friend law professor Christopher Green on to help us out with that. And this is a complicated matter. I have mixed feelings about this, and I'll be honest. I think we need to do something about the disparity in trade, no doubt. The president, of course, loves to impose tariffs. He said before, tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary, as a matter of fact. The question is, should one person have that sort of control? I get worried that, okay, what if the president, not just Donald Trump, any president in the future, said, you know what, 1,000% tariff. I don't even know how you do that, but you could take 100 and multiply it by 10, I guess. So what's to stop if they can do it unilaterally without congressional authority? And then there's a question as to, hey, can the Congress confer such authority to the president? So you get into some complicated matters here. Are some of these tariffs necessary because we're in an emergency national security situation? So
that's what the Trade Act of 74 dealt with, which gave the president the power to retaliate with tariffs if a foreign country is being unfair in their business practices.
Well, the question is, does that rise to the level of being an emergency? I don't know. And that's what the courts are going to have to sort out, is whether or not the basis for the tariffs.
I think there was another part of that act that talked about if the influx of goods is damaging to domestic production, the president also has leeway. And
that's questionable whether or not that's happening. I mean, again, all that's highly subjective. That's the only point I'm making, is that it's a little different if you're like under attack, as in military attack, where perhaps that is seen as a tool to fight back against that. We'll see where it goes. It's a complicated thing, no doubt about it, and there have been lots written about it, lots of analysts who have weighed in, and they come up with different viewpoints on it, but I still think that it's headed to the Supreme Court. Now, the Trump administration believes that they will prevail at the Supreme Court level. And in fact, Peter Navarro wrote an opinion piece over the weekend. about it. And As you said, six of this, you talk about the 7 judges, 6 of those judges, I thought it was all of them, 6 of those judges were appointed by Democratic presidents. And that's a shame, isn't it? And that's disturbing, is that we have courts who were infusing their political beliefs into their decision making. And that should not be the case. They should make those decisions based on law. So the states have lined up against the tariffs, and they're the ones that, and they're blue states, and they're the ones that push this lawsuit out there. So there is a question that whether or not the tariffs meet the test of national emergency. And according to the Act, according to the IEEPA, which is what governs these tariffs, it says, or who can do it and when they can be used, that there must be an unusual and an extraordinary threat with its source outside the U.S., a formal emergency declared under the National Emergency Act, and measures used strictly to deal with that threat. So the Trump administration asserts that, yes, the president, in fact, did rely on those provisions in imposing tariffs. It's going to be interesting for sure to see where all that goes. We're stepping aside for a break, and we're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
We're rolling.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
Awesome. On SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. It's Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Monday. Not really sure. We'll just work our way through the rest of the week. But we're glad you're with us today. It always feels like that summer's over once Labor Day hits, and you're kind of moving towards the fall, and then ultimately the holidays, the winter, and then guess what? They'll be back at the Capitol. Oh, geez. And in fact, in Washington, they're back today. And do they ever have a lot of work to do? Man,
they always have a lot of work to do because they don't seem to get a whole lot of work done.
They got some deadlines approaching they got to deal with. This organization that I was referring to, the International Emergency Economic, not organization, the Act, International Emergency Economic Powers Act. That's the IEEPA, of course. And that's what largely governs the president's authority with respect to tariffs. And that's where the IEEPA says there must be an unusual and extraordinary threat with its source outside the U.S. So Navarro did, I thought, a good job of explaining the White House's position in using its authority to impose these tariffs. But ultimately, and he did cite, by the way, Rhino, the 4 who dissented on the ruling from the federal court that voted against the 7 who struck down and found that the president was unlawful in the imposition of certain tariffs. And so this has gone to the Supreme Court. Some stuff has gone related to this in the past. And they've confirmed that upholding duties is a way to, quote, adjust imports, and that deals with the claim that regulation importation in the IEEPA excludes tariffs. That seems a little bizarre to me. What do you mean regulating imports doesn't include tariffs? I mean, that's a core of imports, is it not? So I have problems with that one, honestly. And that's where the majority, those 7 who voted to find that, who voted in finding that the president was outside of his swim lane here. But the Supreme Court has confirmed that, yeah, duties are an effective tool and a legitimate tool available to the president to adjust imports. I think the question that the Supreme Court needs to sort out is, what do you mean by adjust imports, and when does it become a problem where the president needs to act and impose tariffs? And the Congress actually confirmed this in 1977. That may be one of the provisions and actions you were referring to. And it copied language in 77, did the Congress, from the Trading with the Enemy Act, which the courts had already confirmed included the power to tariff, and Congress could have carved out those tariffs, but didn't. Instead, the House says, yeah, Congress knew it was preserving its authority while adding safeguards at the executive level, that emergencies must be reviewed annually. So that's something else I guess I didn't realize, that if you impose tariffs for the purpose of mitigating an emergency, you can't do that permanently. There's got to be a review. And as soon as the emergency is over, by the way, you got to repeal the tariffs. I didn't realize that. So that's kind of something new. Congress is supposed to be consulted and reports filed every 6 months. Didn't realize that either. Those checks, according to this act in 77, sort of keep the power in place rather than erasing it. And that's what the court said here. No, you can't do that at all. So you can see where this is going to linger on and ultimately make its way to the Supreme Court. And then there's always the major questions doctrine, and all that really means is, okay, is this a matter for the Congress? It's a big enough issue where more people need to be involved, or is this something that can be done unilaterally by the executive branch? So you get situations where some things do constitute a major question, therefore Congress should be involved, and there are others that don't. And this is what the Supreme Court is going to have to root out and figure out. Typically, that's used for domestic cases, not so much for international matters, and that's, of course, what we're dealing with trade and tariffs. And based on law, I didn't realize this either. Rhino, you probably did. The president can ban imports altogether if they're considered some sort of threat to national security. Now, I got to tell you, that makes sense to me. Who the heck wants to wait on a Congress deliberating this? We could be blown up by the time they come to some conclusion. So that makes total sense. I'm thinking about Huawei chips in some of the network infrastructure used to power our communication systems, where I think we've confirmed that the CCP had the means to intercept data moving across those chips, those routers.
They came with a built-in backdoor.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, here, U.S., have some of these cheap China-made routers and switches and other network infrastructure. Wink, wink. Pay no attention to the fact that we can literally read and hear and see the data as it moves across that network infrastructure. And if it's something we have interest in, well, we'll just pull it off into our world in China, deep in the annals of communist China and figure out something that we could do using that data to harm this country. Yeah, that's pretty much. So you remember we had, and in fact, recall that the president, he kind of lashed out at the EU as well, because the EU continued to install Huawei gear, and the president said, you really shouldn't do that. You're letting China use the back door. And, of course, giving China any sort of information that would enable them to unleash harm on the EU and just the West in general is bad for all of us. The president knows that.
It's honestly more dangerous for them to have a backdoor in the U.S. because the U.S. has so much innovation.
No doubt about it. And might it give them access as well to sensitive military systems? Possibly. I mean, we don't know where all that data is flowing across that might do that.
No, that's just Chinese nationals joining the military and sending it home.
That's true. They don't need anything as sophisticated as backdoors into silicon, right? That's true. What a dumb thing that was. So we'll see where all this goes. But the Congress is back. Hold on to your wallets. The Congress is back in town. The big agenda item they got to deal with is a shutdown is scheduled for the end of the month. If the Congress doesn't fund government, are they going to pass the old stopgap continuing resolution, which just says, oh, yeah, just keep it all going just like it is, which would mean a continuation of the Biden budget? Or are we going to get regular order where the Congress would debate, as they are supposed to, 12 bills that would appropriate money for the discretionary functions of government?
I need to find somewhere I can get some action on no on regular order and the over on Justice Jackson's dissent on tariffs.
Yeah, that's
probably make a pretty penny with that parlay.
That's a good one. So they're back, as they say, and this is what's on their plate. They don't have a lot of time to debate these 12 bills. I predict some rather contentious deliberation. And, of course, you got to get 60 votes over in the Senate. And that's no easy task. We're stepping aside for a break. It's middays. We're just getting started in the Element Wealth studio.
Be all right.
From the Seabrook.com.
Attention, adoring fans! It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Thanks for joining us today. We've talked on this program before about the declining birth rate in this country and the risks associated with that. Elon Musk is on record as saying we're running out of people. We're going to run out of humans. And that's just based on the birth rate being below the level it needs to be to, of course, continue to propagate humans on the planet. You got to have some way to offset and reproduce, to offset and counter those who perish. It's absolutely true. Well, here's a silver lining in that, I'll say. There was a survey done recently by the U.S. Social Survey and World Values Survey that tracked birth rates based on political leanings, not party leanings, but philosophy, ideology. So the birth rate among progressives in the U.S. has declined at a much sharper pace than among conservatives. Hey, that may not be bad. In fact, from 1980, where it was virtually a tie at 2.7 per household, 2.7 births, now down for progressives to about 1.7. Conservatives from 2.7 down to about 2.4. So a much more precipitous decline among progressives, as the left likes to refer to themselves in this country. And the same is true across the entire developed world. The trend lines look very similar. You could basically overlay the charts. Interesting. But maybe we'll see the liberals in the country become extinct, whereas we'll have more conservatives running around the United States. How about that? Maybe they're the endangered species.
Well, according to one poll, their favorability is as low as 15%.
It's incredible. I know. It really is. And it doesn't seem like it's getting any better. And, man, and they keep doing things that are dumb, in my view, and sort of doubling down on what made them so unpopular. I'm looking right now at a video of that goofball Jacob Fry. You know him, the mayor of Minneapolis, who I didn't think handled the horrific shootings at a Catholic school recently very well. He had to inject his politics into it when there's no really place for that. So I'm looking at this video, and it was an event held in Minneapolis, and it's a bunch of Somalians. You know that city has a large population of Somalians. There are hundreds of Somalians hoisting the flag of Somalia. Not one American flag in the room. And this guy not only shows up, this goofball Fry, it's kind of gross to watch him, but he's like doing this dancing. They're playing music, and he's coming out, and he's doing all kinds of goofy little dance moves. It's really slimy looking, honestly. And he went to sit down, but he didn't. He danced with the crowd. He's like trying to engage with them and their dance moves and style. It's just cringeworthy. Might he attend a similar event where there are freedom-loving American patriots?
Doubtful.
I know, and that's ridiculous. So keep tumbling down, you idiots. Oh, Jerry Nadler, what about him? He's been in Congress 34 years. I know a lot of folks want to see term limits enacted in this country. He's a poster child for it. He's worthless, honestly. He says he ain't running again. He from New York, of course. I know you shed a tear over that when you heard that.
I'm all choked up.
He is out of here. But it just seems like that the left in this country continues to double down. You got the mayor of Chicago having these rallies. We will stand for democracy and just say no to National Guard and all this kind of stuff. Did you see the statistics over the weekend? The crime, the shootings, the murders? Are they just ignoring this reality in their backyard? Seems like it. Wake up. Your place is a war zone. Now, I know Chicago's a big place. It's not everywhere. It doesn't matter. What little there is, relatively speaking, is way too much. And he seems to be indifferent. He doesn't have a solution, doesn't want to solve the problem, doesn't want to accept help. And I tell you, the mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, she did a little mea culpa on it, didn't she? Because you can't deny the real data showing that, yeah, just having guys out that look like they mean business on the streets, in the neighborhoods, it deters crime. How about that?
The mere threat of enforcement.
Right. Instead of, oh, no big deal, you just have to spend 30 minutes or so getting booked, and then you're out. Cashless bail or other crazy ideologies that have been injected into plain old law enforcement and enforcement of the basic rule of law, just defying it altogether. But they continue
they don't like the statistical realities.
Which you and I have talked about it. I think I told you, somebody on social media jumped all over me how I was all wrong about that. And I got curious and started digging into the FBI.
The people that say we're wrong are the people that don't have a high enough IQ to understand per capita statistics.
Correct. So I went straight to the FBI. Now, I guess they could argue and say the FBI's wrong. I think they call it Report 43, as I recall, something like that. It's all broken down. And by the way, it's not just the FBI. There are numerous other research organizations that have documented this. And what people will say is that, in pointing that out, you're just being a racist. No, I'm dealing with the problem head on. Let's figure out what we got to do and devise a plan to address it, to correct it, to fix it. And last I checked, the desire for safety is fairly universal. Even minorities say, yeah, we're glad they're here. This place is rife with crime, and it turns out I feel a little safer with the National Guard around D.C. Imagine what that could do to Chicago, so desperately needed. And this is just all about their disdain and contempt for one person, Donald Trump. So, okay, you don't like him, but you can't deny this is a pretty good plan. If your city weren't afire, ablaze, metaphorically, this would be unnecessary. But it is, and it has been, and people are sick of it. And it's really shameful and despicable that in this country so many people feel unsafe. Unsafe praying in a church? Children, school children? Think about that. Wrap your head around that. All driven by the left's crap. And, of course, what did they say? Well, the problem is there's not enough affordable housing. You're telling me that the fact that you can't afford a house makes you go kill a child praying? Square that up for me. I can't make that work. If it weren't that, you'd blame it on something else. Let's be honest. You're just coming up with something you think scores you political points. No other reason whatsoever. You're politicizing the heinous assassination of children praying. That's how sick you people are. Totally incredible. Really is. But Nadler, he says he is out of there, which I think is absolutely good news. You saw this, alcohol consumption way down in this country. What the heck's going on there? A Gallup poll.
Everybody's got a high-definition camera in their pocket, so it's a little bit more embarrassing to show your butt in public when you have one too many.
I brought that up because you opined that to me. You posited it last week when we were on break, and I wanted you to get that out there. Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. Don't act like a fool. It's going to be on camera.
You're going to be a meme.
We're coming right back. Final segment, hour one. Then J.T. Mitchell and Michael Borky at 11:05.
Come on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
You're willing to sacrifice our love. You never take advice. Someday you'll pay the price. I know. I've seen it before. It happens all the time. You're closing the door. You leave the world behind. You're digging for gold.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. So, Labor Day, of course, is thought by many to be kind of a progressive leftist holiday due to its roots in celebrating labor and, in particular, labor unions. It's been a holiday since 1894, and it's supposed to celebrate a long history of work and their contributions to our society. There was a Labor Day parade, used to be, first one ever, in 1882 in New York City. And then, of course, it was declared a national holiday in 1894, observed on the first Monday in September. Kind of the unofficial end of summer. But there were, of course, lots of evolutions in labor in this country. And this is another situation where, if you think about our founders' message to constantly be in search of a more perfect union, which I think indicates that we are flawed humans and we make mistakes. For me, it's a matter of, do you want to dwell on the past and continue to equate the past to modern day? Or do you want to recognize the immense progress that's been made in this country through the years, making it a more perfect union? Perfect? No. I'm not sure it will ever be. I don't think it's possible for humans to achieve perfection, consistent, constant, enduring perfection. But to recognize issues and correct those? Sure. And I think we do that. And was there a time in this country where there was abuse of labor? Yeah, absolutely. Nobody's denying that, by the way. Is it better now? How do you even measure that? It's so massively better now. And that's kind of what I think we lose stock of, is the progress. Now, does that mean we just say, okay, wash your hands, job done, nothing else? No. Constantly, we're working on correcting lots of things in our country. But Labor Day kind of honestly grew a little bit out of clashes between labor and police in the American Midwest. And originally, May Day was also a worker holiday, it turns out. The Haymarket riot, May 1st, 1886. Thousands of workers emptied onto the streets of Chicago, demanding a simple 8-hour workday. This demonstration endured for several days, and a bomb was set off on May 4th, killing 7 police officers and 8 civilians. You know, to this day, never found the perpetrator. Don't know who set the bomb off. And so this, of course, inspired an international gathering of socialists in Paris to declare the 1st of May, May Day, a holiday honoring workers, known now as International Workers' Day. So just a little history on Labor Day. But again, I maintain, think of how much better things are today. It's not even remotely close, honestly, to what it was. Were there abuses? Yeah. Mistakes? Yeah. Unfair treatment? Absolutely. We keep working on that.
There's a big difference in forming a union to fight against the fact that at the meatpacking plant, if somebody falls in the grinder, they don't stop the grinder. Compared to, well, we got to have a union to keep you from automating offloading that ship. Because we got to have 3 guys with a weird Italian last name with connections nobody talks about sitting there with a clipboard marking down all the tags going in and out.
And Rhino's absolutely right on that. We talked about that. That's when the longshore workers were striking and threatening, and they ended up, and we were all worried about supply chain crunches as a result, which did occur, but they did get back to work, but they were able to preserve that provision of their contract that Rhino just described, which basically requires 3 people to do a job that could be easily automated. So in their contract, they negotiated, you can't automate certain jobs. In other words, you can't be more efficient and keep costs down for consumers. You got to hire people to keep your little under-the-table agreement with the syndicate, as you indicate. Yeah, that's where labor unions go awry, in my view. Fox News, Super Talk News coming at you now, top of the hour, and then J.T. Mitchell and Michael Borky. Stay with us.
Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays. We're coming at you from the Element Wealth Studio. It's a Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday. We're still confused around here. We're not really sure. But it's our pleasure to welcome now J.T. Mitchell, News Director, Super Talk Mississippi News, who's stepped into a bit of a new role this year, covering sports here at Super Talk.
Well, I just do as I'm told, Gerard.
Yeah, I hear you.
I am excited, though. Very excited because I've done some fill-in work in the past for Prep Bowl. This is the first full season for me to do color commentary. I'm alongside Michael Borky, who is phenomenal at calling games, and we're on 97.3 WFMN Jackson every Friday night with Hartfield Football, which is the newest member of the SuperTalk family that also includes 18 other high school teams every week.
Wow. So are we covering more this year, high school games, than we have in the past? It seems like. I mean, it's a bunch.
It is a bunch, but that always goes back to the conversation of people out there don't necessarily realize what all this company does.
I agree.
I mean, we have our hands in every jar possible, and so every year when it comes to high school football, I think we have our finger on the pulse just about as good, if not better, than anyone else out there. I mean, when you think about it's 18 high schools and then the Jones County Game of the Week every Friday night. That's on talk and music stations across the state. And then you get a quick breather, and then from 10 to 11:30 p.m. you have the Mississippi Farm Bureau High School Scoreboard Show, the longest-running scoreboard show in this state's history, year number 30. I mean, It's incredible work, and then you add in the news coverage that we put into high school throughout the year. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So what caught your attention over the weekend? Start with high school. Anything in particular there? You had the big Brandon game, Brandon Tupelo, right?
There were some big games. For me specifically,
yeah.
I was pretty engulfed with the color commentary for Hartfield. And, man, that was a really good game between two really good teams. So Hartfield has won back-to-back MAIS championships. And then Columbia High School, an interesting storyline is that they've been really successful over the past 8 years. The first 7 of those, they had Chip Builder back as the head coach. And then he left for last year. He went to Louisiana, but he came back this year. And so he's back on his old stomping grounds after a 1-year hiatus, 85% winning percentage. They're always one of the best teams in public school 4A.
Right.
And so when you have two powerhouses going up against each other like that, I was not surprised with how the game turned out. It was 22-21 and decided by the very last play. It was a great game. I learned a couple things as well. I learned that you cannot hurdle someone in high school football. It's a penalty.
What does that mean? How do you do? What does that look like? How do you hurdle someone?
You know, when you have the ball, you're
just
running and you
over?
jump over someone like Saquon Barkley. You're celebrated in the NFL or college football. In high school, it's a penalty, 15 yards.
I didn't know that.
I had no idea. So Hartfield has a kid by the name of Braylon Womack. He's a 5-star, the number 1 safety in America, committed to Auburn. I don't know if I've seen a more athletic kid in person. And if you give him open space, he's gone. And he got a little open space, hurdled a defender coming at him in pursuit, and they called a penalty and took it back. I had no idea.
Safety issue, you think? Has that always been the case?
I would assume if you reached out to the MAIS or MHSAA, they would say it is a safety issue. But it makes no sense to me if you're celebrated for it on the upper levels. I mean, if you look at the cover of this year's Madden game, it's Saquon Barkley hurdling someone.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy. But Hartfield is loaded with talent. Of course, they are 0-1 at this point, but we have MRA this week, and there were a lot of people that I think may have overreacted to this loss. Of course, you want to win every single game on your schedule, but this was a non-conference game. I call it a measuring stick game. This is the first one you get to measure against someone else how good your team is. I think Hartfield's going to be fine. I mean, they have some studs, to be honest. They have a new quarterback. He looked good. Ethan Elliott. We mentioned Womack. He's a 5-star. They have a 3-star linebacker, Tonka Green. He's committed to South Alabama, but he has offers from a lot of people. They have a 3-star running back who just got a Michigan offer. They have 2 linebackers, Coleman Williams and Coleman Yoder, who are good. A uber-talented team full of college offers and a good coach. Craig Bowman is a really good coach. Otherwise, he would not have won the last 2 championships. I think they're going to be fine. If you're a Hawk fan out there listening, I think you guys are going to be fine. But everybody can keep up with it by tuning into WFMN Jackson 97.3 every single week.
Interesting. So this hurdling thing still intrigues me. It seems to me like that would be safer. You're avoiding contact by hurdling, so I'm not really sure where that comes from. I don't know how long that rule's been around, but we've been doing that for a while. And it doesn't apply in college and NFL, right? It's just high school.
No, it doesn't. And when I was playing ball, on the high school level at least, I don't remember anybody caring. If you were athletic enough to hurdle another human being,
you clap for them. Exactly.
But you talk about the rest of the games. There were some big games. I was surprised that Park Lane beat Jackson Prep. I loved the showdown in Starkville, where Starkville was down in the fourth quarter, came back. They won 57-54. And apparently their quarterback, according to, I think I saw Brian Haydad on Twitter about it, is just a dog.
Yeah.
And MRA beat up on Jeff Davis County. You had Gulfport lose to Picayune. I was kind of surprised by that one. So there were some upsets. It was the first full week. We got some games last week. This was the first full week, and I don't think it disappointed.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, so we're just getting cranked up. We had some games Thursday and Friday last week. Is that right?
Yes. I don't know the reason. At one point, there were games scattered throughout the week because of a ref shortage.
I've heard that.
I'd love to know if that was still the case. It seems like most of the games are back on Fridays, though, which is good because it's not Thursday Night Lights, right? It's Friday Night Lights. But it's going to be a great season, and I can't stress enough how much this company has its finger on the pulse. If you want high school football, if you like high school football, obviously you may not live in Gulfport where you can hear the Gulfport game, but we have the SuperTalk Live app where you can get every single talk and music station. Therefore, you can get whatever game you want from Corinth all the way down to the coast. It's pretty phenomenal stuff.
Yeah, the app's really good, and I know, like you and others that are here, we inform lots of people about the app because it is very functional and it's really easy to use, and the ability to pick any of the stations across the state means you can get the content you're looking for. So, and certainly high school football coverage, no exception.
Yeah,
there.
and there's an easy button on there to get it. Some other scores, you probably remember Moss Point used to be a powerhouse. They lost 47-0 to Pascagoula.
Yeah.
And that's a big rivalry right there. We mentioned that Starkville game. Madison Central, they beat Pearl 20-6.
Okay.
You passed Christian in the annual Oyster Bowl, beat Long Beach. That's another deal. There's so much lore to high school football in this state. There's a Possum Bowl. There's a bunch of different wonky trophies that the high school scoreboard show can tell you all that useless knowledge that you want to know, but otherwise you don't need to know. It's a fun time of the year, Gerard.
Well, back in my day, we didn't have the playoff structure system like we have today, and it was bowl games, much like the college world is. Of course, now we have college playoffs, but the one I remember was in Vicksburg, the Red Carpet Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, the state championship was largely considered to be the Capitol Bowl, which was played in Memorial Stadium. And then there was, I don't know, there's one. They were all over the state, similar. So it sounds like to me like many of these bowls have kind of been continued, but they're played during the regular season.
I think you're right. And the Mini Egg Bowl.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, St. Andrews, St. Joe was the Holy War.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think those teams play each other anymore since St. Joe went over to the MAIS.
That's right.
And I remember there was some hubbub about the Holy War being sacrilegious. Come on. It's just football. But there's a lot of football at SuperTalk.fm.
Yeah, appreciate it, JT Mitchell. The Shrimp Bowl, that's the one they used to play on the coast.
That's another good one. High School Scoreboard Show. Learn it all. Every Friday at 10 p.m.
Well, great job to all the team for the coverage of high school football across Mississippi on Super Talk Mississippi. JT Mitchell, the news director at Super Talk Mississippi, now involved in broadcasting high school football. Appreciate you coming in.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Gerard.
We're stepping aside for a break. We'll be right back.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On Super Talk Mississippi.
Chicago, what a great tune that is, man. That one never gets old. 25 or 6-4. Use your imagination to figure what that's about because there's no consensus. But that's a good one. Appreciate JT Mitchell, the news director here at Super Talk Mississippi News. He's right. This company's involved in a lot of different endeavors, and that being one of them. And the coverage really is good. And the app, I encourage you to download it if you haven't, because you can check us out anywhere in the world. You can tune in to both whatever's going on live on the various stations that are part of the Super Talk Mississippi network, or you can also access some of the archive content as well, and you can stream us video as well as audio. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool application. And you, Rhino, you know this. You've watched radio evolve through the years. If all you're doing is broadcasting content over the radio air, you probably ain't going to make it in this industry. It's evolved quite a bit and diversified by an awful lot. And this company's no exception to that. And it's why it's enabled it to thrive, honestly. It has embraced and adopted all of these new opportunities, new services that can be provided by a radio network such as this. So, talking about Labor Day, labor unions in particular, and how far this country has progressed since the days when, no doubt, there were abuses of laborers, the Gilded Age, and a lot of people still say we're still in the Gilded Age. No, we're not. That's insanity. But the left loves to play that up. So,
how could we possibly still be in the Gilded Age when after the Gilded Age came the Great Depression?
Right. Exactly.
It just makes zero logical sense.
I completely agree.
Now, we do have seemingly the same journalistic integrity as the Gilded Age with all the yellow journalism.
That's exactly right. That was prevalent during that period. So the number of people in this country who belong to labor unions, would you hazard a guess at that?
64.5 million.
14.3.
Oh, I was way off.
It is a tenth of the working population. You believe that? So what does that tell you? Labor unions are struggling to find the justification of their value proposition. That's what it means. Not only that, and this is a good thing, our economy is way more services oriented. That's why I've always tried to convey to folks, while I think it's important that we make stuff in this country that's critical to our economy, our national security, our health, I think that the COVID era exposed that when we learned, wait, all of our antibiotics are made in a country that hates us? That's a little bit of a problem. Agree. And it's insane to me.
What was the percent again?
10%.
So that doubled it.
Yeah. Exactly.
So there's roughly 30 million people on the dole of the labor unions. Yeah,
the data I'm looking at says there's 15. So I don't know what the truth is, though. But I know it's down a lot. So, but the working population being, and this is 24 data. I don't think it's changed a whole lot since then. But it sounds fairly close. I mean, there just aren't a lot of people that need labor unions anymore. And where I was going with this is, to a great extent, that's because we are more dominated by the services industries that really don't lend themselves to labor unions. I mean, typically when you think about labor unions, you think about physical labor. And honestly, they're the catalyst for formation of unions. Mainly had to do with, hey, this is really inhumane, the treatment of physical laborers. And I've seen, you probably have too, folks, if you hadn't, go search for it. You can see photos of workers in mines that are literally crammed in to these little vehicles that transport them from above the ground there at the kind of entry point down underneath into the mines. Yeah, it's not fit for human beings, honestly. It's not even fit for animals. And yeah, that's wrong. Should have done that. But we're talking 150 years ago. I mean, things have changed substantially since then. We don't do that anymore. And yeah, did it make sense to organize and push back against the owners of such facilities? And it's not, I'm just using mines because that's one that comes to mind, where they're like 3 layers, 3 decks of these vehicles that would transport to and from the mining location. And these workers would be crammed in there literally like chickens, worse than chickens that you see on the roads in the little cages. But we're long since past that. None of that exists anymore. And yeah, it made sense at the time, I think, to form unions and push back and collective bargain. Yeah, but today their value has diminished dramatically. One of the reasons is because...
Except in the realm of politics.
Still
they're
is.
a great way to funnel money to certain political causes.
And overwhelmingly, as you know, they support Democrats. Democrats have typically been kind of the party of labor unions. That's changed a little bit with the president. He has endeared himself to some labor unions, mainly because of his trade policies, because the unfair trade practices of foreign adversaries And even just foreign companies that are friendly to us have imposed. Australia is one that I always look at as being rather egregious in its trade policies with this country. And the president has been a champion for that, to address those disparities. And, of course, he likes to use tariffs as a way to do that. And so labor unions many of which have seen fit to support him. Where he doesn't get any support from a labor union perspective is the teachers. They're still absolutely dyed-in-the-wool, hardcore liberals. And Randy Weingartner, of course, there are two major ones. I can't remember which one she's the head of. I mean, she's the chief nutcase that runs that labor union. Who could forget her during the COVID era where she really showed her true stripes and true colors? And you know, when you talk about greed and selfishness, you look at her, it's not about her money. It's about her greed and selfishness. We got to have this, we got to have that, we got to have this and that and this and that before we can think about teaching your kids. That's very secondary to satisfying our demands first. I consider that greed and selfishness. So, yeah, he doesn't get a lot of stroke and support from that group. And if he did, I'd be worried, honestly, because that's the people you don't want in your court. I don't agree with, anything that
unless you're a far-left nonprofit, then you love them because they funnel millions of dollars to you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well,
I mean, how many millions of dollars did the California Teachers Union give to the redistricting? Was it, $2-3 million?
A bunch, yes. And of course, it just seems to be a conflict of interest. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Wait, your job is to teach kids. Why are you so engaged and active politically, both from a just vocal support perspective and a financial support perspective? Why?
Because to loser leftists, politics is their personality.
I hate that. That's just wrong. I don't know. But things are changing quite a bit. Now, there is a little bit of news that on this whole subject of unions that didn't get a lot of attention in the media. But last week, just before Labor Day, the president ordered ending collective bargaining with several labor unions that work on national security issues. Again, he has the right to do that because it's a matter of national security. And that's where I'm okay with such broad power, because I get worried that the Congress gets all hung up, as we were talking about, on political crap. No, I'm not going to let him have that. I don't care that it'll keep the world from blowing up. I just can't support that. I mean, literally that could happen, where they would put those feelings above national security. So in this case, it does make sense. But there are about 1.066 million workers of the total 1.3 million workers that are represented by labor unions that work in the federal government that no longer have the right to collective bargaining. So this happened last week without a lot of news, without a lot of attention or fanfare. This is interesting. I think Trump is right to take on the federal labor unions in this regard, honestly, because they're more worried about themselves and their union than national security. Coming back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.com.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
One bourbon, one sky, one beer.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. So, yeah, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 14.3 million members in unions in this country the membership rate at 9.9%. Public sector, 32.2%. No surprise there. Private sector, 5.9%. Wow. So lowest level ever, which I think just illustrates that you really don't offer much of any value anymore. The president, as we just...
we got some comments on the text line. Greg and Newton, I paid union dues for 40 years with the railroad. Never did anything for me.
There you go.
Bill said OSHA replaced the need for labor unions. You don't like where you're getting paid, find another.
Absolutely. So, again, this is the post-Gilded Age era.
Here's another one. Paul and Meridian. My brother works for the post office. He says it's ridiculous to try to get rid of horrible employees.
No doubt about it. And that's one of the biggest problems with labor union contracts. You're untouchable, virtually. It literally is an act of Congress to terminate someone for the worst performance or behavior. You can't do it.
They had a whole movie about it, starring De Niro, where he was like a teamster or a truck driver or something, and he was in with the wrong crowd, and they stole his whole truck worth, and he went to his lawyer with the union, and the union guy's basically like, they can't prove you did it, right? You're fine.
Unbelievable. That's ridiculous. The state of Mississippi, nationally, it's about 10% of the workforce. In Mississippi, I did look it up, it's about 6%. So no surprise there. In the South, typically, labor unions are less prevalent. I think I've shared with you before my experience working in New Jersey, which I believe may be the most unionized states. And it's up until very recently, I believe, Rhino, that unions prevented self-service gas stations. You wanted to buy gas cheaper and pump it yourself, like we're all accustomed to here for decades. No, you couldn't do it in New Jersey. And I want to say maybe Washington State as well was another one. It recently changed law to permit self-service fuel stations. I know you're looking it up, but I don't think I'm off base too far on that, as I recall. But I remember...
Oregon had a ban that was lifted in 2023.
Okay, Oregon. I said Washington. New Jersey.
New Jersey is still illegal for drivers to pump their own gas.
Okay, so they haven't rescinded it. I got you. So I think I talked about working in New Jersey, commuting for nearly 2 years, actually a little over 2 years. And I was astonished when I first got there. I get out of my vehicle, and, man, they come running after me. You can't pump your gas. What do you mean? So I had this was in the 90s, in the late 90s. But I then learned just how dominant unions are in that state. And I do think I'm right in that it's the most unionized state. If it's not, it's missing a heck of a chance to be so. But working in New Jersey and dealing directly with labor unions.
They're down to 5 now.
In New Jersey?
Yeah.
5 labor...
Fifth. They're fifth.
They're number 5. Okay.
Hawaii's number 1 with 26.5%.
Gosh.
New York's number 2 with 20.6%. Alaska's number 3 with 17.7%. Connecticut's number 4 at 16.5%. And New Jersey is 5th at 16.2%.
Okay. Well, I suspect that's declined since I was there 30 years ago. The percentage, I think it was probably higher, but nonetheless. And New Jersey, many people may not realize, is home to like all the major pharmaceutical companies in the country. They're all like headquartered around that Princeton area in New Jersey. But
we got some work to do. We're 37, excuse me.
Yeah, you're right. We should be lower than that, higher than that, I should say, with a lower percentage. But I work directly with the custody officers for the New Jersey Department of Corrections. Had a very powerful union. It was crazy, the deals that they had negotiated in those contracts. And they were extremely powerful. And, of course, you had all the officers, and then you had those that were above that level, like the lieutenants and then the couple of majors and whomever ran the deal. They were not, of course, in the unions, but it was constant fighting, constant. And when I dug into it, we were responsible for automating the scheduling system, which also had to interface with the state's payroll system. Unbelievable what they had negotiated in those contracts. First thing that struck me was they had negotiated something called overlap overtime. Basically what the union's position was, hey, every time we end a shift and start a shift for the same, they call it a post. And you can imagine there are many in the corrections environment that are 24 hours. And every time you start and end one, there's a period of time where the person going off duty has to sort of brief the person coming on duty if there's anything going on. Well, that's 10 minutes of overtime. They call it overlap. So you got 10 minutes when you started and 10 minutes when you ended. You got 20 minutes of overtime for every shift. Every shift. You automatically got overtime for that 20 minutes. And I observed it. I never really saw any 10 minutes of discussion or handoff, but they negotiated that. And there are a million other things that I could spend the whole show talking about. But the point is, unions aren't as prevalent as they used to be. And I think that's largely because their value is diminished, as we had folks that you were just talking about on our text line that have direct experience with that. And I think the other thing is that we tend to lose sight of, we're a wealthier country because we have transitioned more to high-value services, where manufacturing at its peak as a percentage of the overall workforce, I think it was 1979. You and I have looked that up before, based on its percentage of the total GDP, and it's down substantially since then. But yet manufacturing has increased. Well, that's just because the rest of our economy has outpaced it and grown. We've just invented lots of new industries that didn't even exist back then. It turns out that I think is correlated. Minimum wage is, of course, a popular matter, especially by the left. Living wage, minimum wage, and all that stuff. And then you look into it, and I think this shocks most people, and this again from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 1.1% of the workers in this country earn the federal minimum wage. 1.1. It was at its highest point in 1979. It was about 13.5%. Well, that's a good thing. And that's not because people are earning less, obviously. That would be illegal. No, it's because people are earning more. We don't have as many. And most of them, I think when I looked at the demographic-based statistics, they're 18 to 24. They're entry-level workers. They're not supporting a household. So things have changed quite a bit. You heard on our news, the Powerball, 1.2 billion, I think. The next drawing, no winner in the last one, which I believe was that Friday or Saturday.
It's up to $1.3 billion.
Well, okay, 1.3.
But the next drawing tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah. Looking at that right
Cash
now.
Cash value, $589 million.
It sure is, 1.3. That's Wednesday, September 3rd. That's when they'll draw. So the one thing I noticed from the Lottery Corporation, the board members receive a weekly report every Sunday from the Lottery Board President, Jeff Hewitt. And you can always see those numbers spike, man, when those Powerball and Mega Millions, when the multi-state game jackpots are up. Last week, sales just under $12 million for the week. The week before, 8.3. So almost a 50% increase because the jackpots are up. I suspect we're going to see the same this week due to this really big jackpot at the Powerball for $1.3 billion. Truly is incredible. On the C Spire text line, Ben from Madison says, Gerard, have you heard anything about redistricting in Mississippi? I've heard a few Republicans say they'd like to see Benny's district become more competitive. I've heard that, Ben, but I haven't heard about any sort of definitive plans to redistrict. Rhino and I were talking about that earlier. To me, this idea that the black voting age population, acronym BVAP, should even be a factor in drawing congressional districts or, honestly, even state rep and Senate districts.
That's the question Louisiana has put before the Supreme Court.
Right, and I think that should be decided on. I mean, I don't know how you can look at that and call it anything other than discrimination. You're giving preferential treatment based on race in something critically important. I think it's time to end that practice of, that doesn't have enough BVAP in it, go back and redraw that. Because that's what happens now. Courts order that based on that. It shouldn't even be considered, in my view. I have an idea about how to address that problem I'll discuss on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
Polyupa, Mississippi.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Jim Croce. We're back with you in the Element Wealth Studio. Maybe that's what we need on the south side of Chicago is Leroy Brown to take care of business, huh?
Well, I just thought of it because it's like, how long has this song been in the rotation? And,
exactly.
How long has Chicago had problem parts?
Exactly. I mean, I remember learning about it. So when I got to school, I think I've told you I worked for Arthur Anderson, I like to say, before they started shredding documents. But we all had to go to the Center for Professional Development, which was in St. Charles, Illinois, about 40 miles outside of Chicago and suburban. It was like the farthest suburb outside of the city. Beautiful little town on the Fox River. But you fly into O'Hare, and that's where the firm was located. And I got to know a lot of people that lived in Chicago. Well, I got to admit, I'd never been to Chicago till I was 21, 22. And I remember distinctly, driving into the town, you look at that skyline at night, it's impressive with the Hancock Building, the Sears Tower, and Michigan Avenue on the lake there. Just beautiful, no doubt. But that's that part of Chicago. Then they started telling me about this place called Cabrini Greens. Look it up. I think it's projects on the south side. And what a war zone it was. Guys, this was 1980. That was 40 years ago. 45 years ago. So, and Croce recorded that not too far from that date.
Yeah, Cabrini Green was demolished in 2011.
Okay. Probably best. But if you could...
Quote, the high-rise towers faced severe deterioration due to neglect and were demolished.
Oh, duh. I'm told that literally that was like a war zone, Cabrini Green. Just a free-for-all of violence and decay and drugs and everything else. And it was your classic tower sort of public housing, right?
It was the filming location for the horror film Candyman.
Okay, well, there you go. But I just remember that even back then was a problem. So back to Ben's question about the districting deal. In my opinion, that BVAP shouldn't be a factor in that. That just seems like we're turning the clock back. We got to make sure it's got this many black people, this many white people, and oh, by the way, Mississippi, even though you're primarily a Republican state, you got to have a Democrat rep. Of your 25% of your delegation in the House. And then you go to some states that are deep blue, equivalent to Mississippi being deep red, and they don't have any Republican seats. Or it's disproportionate. Why don't we just randomize this whole thing? So I actually suggested, and it would take some thought to make this work. Why don't you just use a random number generator to produce some latitudinal and longitudinal coordinates and feed that into something that could draw districts? And what it is that's doing that has zero bias. And you could produce such a technology system to do so. So random number generator says, boom, here's you some coordinates. And then that serves as input to the system that says, here, Mississippi, this is what your maps look like. And because it's got to adhere to the constitutional requirement, which basically says, though the Congress controls the number of House seats we have, that's statute. The Constitution says you take a census and you divide that by the number of seats that Congress has determined should be in the House of Representatives. Whatever that figure comes up to, that's the size of each seat. So what are we at? 720,000, I think, is what a congressional seat currently consists of. That's based on the most recent 2020 census. Just over 700,000, right? What are you seeing there? And that's how we end.
780,000.
80,000. Okay, so it's a little higher than I thought. So we take a census, we divide it by 435, and boom, that figure says, okay, you need each district needs 780,000. We need to come up. I guess the only point I'm making, and this is just an off the cuff idea, and maybe that's not practical, but it's as good as any. I just think it needs to be more random in nature. And not, well, let's make sure that this one's got this percentage of this population here and that, and you end up with these crazy drawn districts like we had to do with Benny's, honestly, to satisfy court rulings, which it's like he's got almost the entire western 25% of the state. Had to extend it further south. Remember that, to get sufficient population, but also keep the BVAP in line, and I think that's wrong.
But where's the HVAP and the AVAP
Exactly.
and the IVAP?
That's precisely right. I just think that is wrong-headed, wrong-thoughted, if there is such a word. It's time for Fox News SuperTalk News. It's top of the hour. We've got the afternoon portion of Middays coming at you next. We'll kick it off with Captain Criss Turnipseed, the director of the Mississippi Highway Patrol Public Affairs Division. We'll get an update on the traffic over in the roads over the Labor Day holiday.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays. We're in the Element Wealth studio. Pleased to welcome now Captain Criss Turnipseed. He's the director of the Mississippi Highway Patrol Public Affairs Division. Captain, good to see you, sir. Looks like you're out and about on the Mississippi highways today.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Gerard. Good to see you, too. Yeah, it's a busy Tuesday. I'm starting to think that maybe some folks stayed an extra day on Labor Day this weekend and coming back on Tuesday. There's a lot of traffic out here today.
Well, that's the first question.
For this time of day. I mean, it's a lunch period.
Yeah.
It's a lunch period. Maybe people are going to get lunch, but my goodness, there's a lot of cars out today.
Well, and that's a question I had with gas prices moderating somewhat over the past couple of years. Did you see an uptick in the traffic on Mississippi highways?
About the same as you can expect for a holiday weekend. I mean, it was a ball game weekend this weekend, so of course it's going to be an uptick on that. People going. We played. I think Ole Miss played at home. Maybe State played down at Southern, so it was Mississippi. A lot of Mississippi traffic due to that. I don't know if that's Labor Day or that's just due to people going out and supporting their teams. But yeah, there was definitely an uptick in traffic this weekend. Considering all. Wasn't a perfect weekend. We did have 3 fatal crashes over the holiday period, but a lot better than we had last Labor Day. Last Labor Day, I believe we had 7 fatal crashes. So, I mean, if that number's not 0, we're not happy with it. So
sure.
We always shoot for that. You got to have a goal, but you do the best you can, Gerard.
Captain, can you share with us what at this point appears to be the cause of those crashes, so that people can be aware and adjust their driving habits appropriately?
I have not seen the accident report, so I don't really have, what the contributing circumstances are. I think most of them were, it's hard to say, on one call. We had one that was a 2-vehicle crash involving a motorcycle. And the others were single vehicle crashes, I believe. We'd have to go back and look at them. But, I mean, if I had the crash reports right here in front of me, I could probably tell you that it's probably one of a few things. Too much speed, failed to yield, following too closely. It's usually the usual suspects when it comes to crashes. Gerard, there's really nobody's pioneered a new way to have a crash. It's usually the same thing all the time, and that's why our message stays consistent. We'll buckle up, don't drive impaired, don't drive distracted, and slow down. It's just a common reoccurring theme, time after time after time.
Sure.
In most of our car crashes. So
sure.
There's nothing special here. Just pay attention while you're out there driving, and take your time. Don't get in a hurry. And if you can do those few things, your chances are you're going to make it to your destination.
Yeah, absolutely. Good message. So you mentioned motorcycle, Captain, and it kind of triggered this to me. It's not unusual to see motorcycles on our highways, and particularly here in the capital city on I-55, just absolutely screaming at a speed that's beyond belief. Zooming past and everybody and weaving in and out of traffic. And it just seems like the slightest little interference on the road there could be catastrophic. What should we as motorists do, Captain, when we witness that? I mean, I've been known to call the highway patrol before when I see one of these motorcycles going up 55 there, especially right past the stack. It seems like they're doing 150 miles an hour. I mean, I feel like I'm standing still when they're going by me. And I've called the highway patrol before, and I've seen, highway patrol trooper vehicles come out on the roads. If it's happened in my town or in a city, I've called local law enforcement. What should we do?
Well, that is one of those things that's kind of, you do the right thing. Of course, you can call it in. Those are not the easiest situations, especially when somebody's traveling that fast, depending on where the closest unit is. If they're driving that fast, and unless you're able to keep eye contact on them and kind of navigate the officer to where that person is going, they jump on and jump off the roadways. Sometimes you catch them, sometimes you don't. Sometimes they wind up in a crash, and we catch them that way, or the coroner catches them pretty much. I mean, it's a hard situation to deal with, Gerard, and you just gotta. It's common sense sometimes on a motorcyclist part. I'm a motorcycle guy myself. I ride bikes. I'm not a sport bike guy, and there's a million ways to die out there in a car, and especially on a motorcycle. I try to be as safe as I can. But folks, individuals like that, you just got to do the best you can. Yeah, you can call it in, and hopefully there's a trooper or a policeman, depending on what the jurisdiction is in the area. Those are usually the ones that give us the biggest problem with trying to evade law enforcement. And you've got to weigh the weight of the speeding versus possibly, ending up in a pursuit where somebody gets killed or somebody innocent, not even involved in the crash, could get hurt. And you just got to do the best you can with them. There's no way to regulate. I mean, it's a hard situation to navigate on those. We do the best we can. We've caught a lot of us. Back when I was a road guy, I got in caught some sport bikes, some fast motorcycle adventure riders, I guess you would call it, and everything went the right way, and made arrests for reckless driving, so on and so forth, or evading pursuit. But you do the best you can with them, and you as a motorist, you got to keep your eyes peeled and just watch at all times. Not just you're driving, but you got to be mindful of other people, not just motorcycles, but other cars as too. You take your life in your hands every time you get on a roadway, and that's just the truth of it. And that's why you got to do the best you can to protect yourself and pay attention, wear your seatbelt, and hopefully you don't encounter somebody out there doing what you were talking about, running 150 down the interstate. We could catch them. We would, and we will try to the best of our ability, but sometimes that's easier said than done, just giving manpower and just the time to respond and where somebody could be by the time where they could actually be by the time we're able to get to the scene. It's a tricky situation to say all that, just to tell you that, I guess.
It just seems like it's more frequent that I encounter these situations, and sometimes they're on one wheel, as you know, driving at a high rate of speed as well, or rearing up, or whatever the case may be. And man, they come out of nowhere, and you don't even literally like, wow, what was that? It's just a blur that goes by it, and you maybe think of it when you mention motorcycle, but I witnessed it literally last Friday. In that same area where it seems to happen, kind of around the Lakeland Drive, I-55 area, that between there and Briarwood, it's unbelievable how fast they go through there. We're fortunate we don't have more accidents as a result of that, but still, though, I think it's a matter of time when something like that causes a big old problem. And I certainly realize that when I call it in, they may or may not be able to catch them. To run them down, because as you said, they'll exit the road. Maybe there's law enforcement that's nearby that they can dispatch, but if they have to get there, by the time they get there, they're gone. They're out, especially traveling at that rate of speed. I certainly get that, but there's always a chance, and that's why I will typically call it in.
Definitely always call it in. We'll do everything we can to get there, and depending on where it is, if it's inside their Jackson, that would fall within their jurisdiction. Yeah. But interstates, anywhere else outside, if we got somebody around, we'll do the best we can to get there, and hopefully justice will prevail. It's hard to make promises that that's going to happen because of the situation of it. But we're definitely, when you call in, we're going to give serious attention to whatever the concern is there, and do everything we can to get control of it.
And that's been my experience. It's thank you that we'll get somebody on it. Boom, we end the conversation, and hopefully that has an effect. And I will say, I have then gone on up the road and seen them pulled over by law enforcement, which means that either they saw it and they did it, or perhaps my call was a catalyst for it.
Or it could have been just divine intervention.
Exactly. And that's fine. So, I always got to ask you, how do we do with respect to the seatbelts over the weekend?
Well, my favorite category, why we push it so hard every holiday weekend. We didn't write but about 617 restraint tickets over the weekend. No, the numbers were actually down a little bit over 100 from last year.
Okay, so 617.
617 people out of the people out there on the road that we actually did catch. Yeah. And that's a drop in the bucket compared to how many there probably were. That's just that's 101 basic. Driver's education right there. Wear your seatbelt. But we're going to keep pushing that message. We're going to keep hammering that message down. Hopefully, one day, maybe before my time's over. I don't know if I have enough time. We can get that down to in the double digits at least.
Gotcha.
I don't know, Gerard. I don't have a lot of faith in that.
Appreciate you calling in as always, Captain Criss Turnipseed, Director of the Mississippi Highway Patrol Public Affairs. Thank you, Captain. Thank you and all the state troopers.
Thanks, Gerard, for all y'all support.
Hi, this is Mark.
It's so awesome!
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
I can't drive 55. I'm going to tell you, I thought I'd died and gone to heaven when Ronald Reagan was elected, and it's one of the first things he did. Like day one, we went from we got to save gas and drive 55 under Carter to increasing the speed limit on the nation's highways.
Can we just go through everything Carter did during his presidency one by one and take them off the books? Because it seems like none of it worked.
Oh, man, he was terrible. Little Amy and nuclear. And so one of the things that doesn't get talked a lot about from an economics perspective that is really common sense when you think about it, but you don't hear this a lot, is that the rate at which, the velocity at which goods and services can move through the economy dictates wealth creation, is a huge factor in that. So moving goods and services on the highways at 55 actually hurts the economy relative to moving them, in this case goods, at 70. That's just proven fact. Want to know why the internet is such an important tool in generating prosperity? Because it's instant. Think about all the commerce. And I'm not talking about just buying stuff on Amazon. I'm talking about lots of things we're all accustomed to doing now in the palm of our hand instantly. A huge contributor.
Although the easiest to wrap your head
prosperity.
around is the Amazon comparison, because pre-internet, let's see, you cut out the little thing at the back of the catalog, and you write down your item numbers, and you put your money order or your check into a self-addressed stamped envelope and send it off, and wait 6 to 8 weeks for delivery.
That's exactly right. So, but Carter didn't understand this concept, and this is another situation where, and think about it, this was the 70s. Oh my gosh, we're running out of oil. Everybody that was around then, I'm sure, just like me, remembers that, and all the other crazy stuff that happened as a result. And this is another situation where I want to say, no, liberals, instead of doing without, you solve the problem. And guess what happened after that? Shale. That was a big thing. And fracking, which largely deals with shale. So we invent new technology. And then you know what else we invented was ways to leverage the unbelievable abundance of natural gas. And so we started building more natural gas-powered electricity generating turbines. Those are just a couple of seriously minor examples.
While President Carter's presidency deserves all the derision I can put forth, I do have to eat a little crow. It wasn't Carter that did the 55, that was Nixon.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I just double-checked.
Okay.
Nixon established a 55-mile-per-hour national speed limit on January 2nd, 74, so right before Carter.
Okay. Somebody on Mark from Gulfport said it was Ford.
No, it was Nixon.
Okay. So what was the purpose? What did Nixon do that for?
To conserve fuel during the 73 oil embargo.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. It was all about conserving fuel and dealing with the energy crisis of the 70s. Well, Ronald Reagan said, what? I mean, enough of that. Like, I'm not sure. It may have been day one when he took office that he raised the speed limit to 70. And I just remember traveling to Oxford when I was in school. That was just dreadful, knowing you had to get on the interstate and drive 55. And it was when he was elected and the speed limit was increased. That, man, that's what a difference it made. But there is something that's irrefutable, and that is the speed again, the speed at which goods and services can move, travel through the economy. Transactions between buyers and sellers directly determines the creation of wealth and prosperity. It's productivity. And you can only create wealth and prosperity when you're more productive. More output per cycle of person, more wealth, more value, more prosperity. You know, I've said many times on the show and when I speak publicly, I have a slide where I attempt to explain sort of Gerard's opinion on what creates wealth inequality. And, of course, the left would have you say, well, taxes are too low. They don't pay enough taxes. Their idea of addressing wealth inequality is just to take from one group and give it to another. See, it's more equal now. How insane is that? And I've always felt, no, it's because
in their la-la land, they think money grows on trees and the wealthy just have a bigger basket.
Just recutting the pie rather than expanding the pie. Totally right. But I've always felt there's a deeper, and this is maybe some second-order thinking here, there's a deeper reason. And it's because we humans continue to innovate and create more tools and innovations. And when we do that, there's some people that just will seize on all of those and figure out ways to leverage tools either they created or others created to produce more wealth. And then there are some who just have no desire to leverage any of those tools or even attempt to learn how. And then there's kind of us mortals in the middle, and we do pretty good. But there's some people that are just blessed with special instincts, special abilities, and they're able to envision things that we can't. And they know that, yeah, if I just had these tools to do this, that, and the other, boom, and the next thing you know, something new's created. And as a result, they get wealthy. You could use that for Amazon, for example. And
is it instincts or is it just a confidence in themselves to do it?
They've got
because there are a lot of people that would say they have good instincts that have come up with good ideas and good products that fell by the wayside because nobody agreed with them.
No doubt. Some of it is it's a combination. You got to have some instinct and some special intelligence, but you also got to have the cojones. And that's what's lacks. There's a lot of people that have these kinds of ideas that probably could manifest into something of value. But, they hesitate to do it because they just like their sort of cushy, regular, predictable circumstances. Stepping out and leaving all that behind, big risk associated with that. The left never seems to understand that concept. Thinks they just all woke up with money in the bank one day. Now then we're going to take it from you. But here's where I'm going with this. I thought that for a few years now that we're within a decade or so of minting the first trillionaire. And I saw a report in one of the economics-related journals a couple of days ago. They're predicting we may have 5 trillionaires within the next 10 years. I think that's plausible. I really do. And this won't be because, they use the system to their own benefit. They got special favors from their crony friends in Congress. No, this will be because they'll invent something that we'll all want and we'll all willingly part with our money for, and they'll get wealthy. And the left will decry it, and they'll get mad about it, and they'll say they did that on the backs of the blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. And I think this is kind of a fitting discussion for Labor Day, but the good news is our system permits this. It facilitates this. The worst thing that could happen is our system interferes with it. And that's what always concerns me. And I think this advent of artificial intelligence and it becoming so pervasive and so accessible and so available, by the way, without money. Think about all that value, all of the benefit one can derive from those tools, and it doesn't cost you anything. And what people are now, right now, dreaming up to create, this is happening right now, things that aren't even a twinkle in our eyes. And they're coming up with it, and they're going to release that. And like you said, the market may say, nah, that's terrible. But on the other hand, there are a few that it says, yeah, I like that. And they'll get wealthy doing it. What is wrong with that? Aren't we all better off because of this human innovation and their creations?
Well, not if you spend every waking moment trying to be miserable.
And that's the exact problem. And a lot of it is, is just envy and jealousy. You can't dismiss that.
And weaponized empathy.
Boy, ain't that the truth. Coming right back.
From the Seabrook.com.
We interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge.
Huge news.
Huge news. Huge. You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Well, it's one for the money, two for the show, three to get ready. Now go, cat, go, but don't you step on my blue suede shoe. Well, you can do anything but stay over my blue suede shoe. Well, you can knock me down, step in my face, slander my name all over the place. We'll do anything that you want to do. But honey, lay off them shoes and don't you step on my blue suede shoe. Well, you can do anything but stay over my blue suede shoe.
On the C Spire text line, Paula Meridian says, when I was a truck driver back years ago, the speed limit was 55 on the interstate. Imagine driving from Nashville to Chicago at 56. Because that's how fast my truck would go. Yeah, Rich in Biloxi said he may have raised it, but I was still driving 55 through the mid-'80s. Yeah, so he got the ball rolling. Rhino actually researched the history on that.
Congress allowed the states to raise certain speed limits in 87 after it was a big push in the early days of Reagan. But the 55-mile-an-hour federal speed limit was not repealed until the National Highway System Designation Act in 1995.
Yeah, there you go. I just know it made a marked difference. And, of course, we experienced significant economic growth in the ensuing years. Of course, a lot of that was largely driven by the Internet build-out, no doubt about that. But it's absolutely true that when we can move things rapidly throughout the country, actually the world, that economic benefit is produced. And doesn't that kind of get validated, Rhino, when you think about just the overall progression of society from our early days when we could only travel on foot? So we went from foot to horse to horseless carriage to jet.
I mean, that was a driving factor for setting Election Day where it is.
Yeah.
It was in order to give people time to finish bringing in the crops to harvest and make it to their local municipality to vote.
Good point. So, again, from using your own human power to advancing to the point of using a horse, an animal that could move faster than a human, to the horseless carriage, the vehicle, the automobile, to the jet age, to the space age, to the Internet age, all the above. And so through those years...
Yeah, we're just missing the nuclear age right there in the middle that we could have had, we should have had.
That's absolutely true. And it feels like this, if you think about this race in AI and data center build-out, it has some similarities with the space age, the nuclear age, as you point out. And we dropped the ball. There's no doubt about that. And again, is that not an example to a great extent of what we talk about a lot is, hey, the only thing that could derail this is the government. And to a great extent, that's what happened. And now we're trying to catch up. Good news is that looks better. You're seeing a lot of activity in that space with respect to construction of new nuclear facilities. It's the only way, honestly, we're going to address our voracious appetite in this new era of demand for electricity. And again, I say it's not wise. In fact, it would be incredibly unwise to say, okay, we just can't do that. We're going to have to let China win that race for dominance in artificial intelligence and quantum computing because we can't produce the power as necessary for that endeavor. No, that would be dumb. And that would pretty much cede our national security, not to mention our economic dominance. So let's solve the problem. Well, okay, In fact, right now on the tube on the Business Channel, the American Energy Institute CEO John Isaac is talking about it. He says, nuclear is the answer, in quotes. That's the chyron on the screen. So maybe they're tuned in and listening to us. Yeah, we agree. So let's get on it.
Because we got some catching up to do.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
We at least need to catch up all the lost time that we wasted, because look at how technology has grown since the 70s and how efficient technology has become. And look at where we could be with nuclear power if we had had decades of innovation and iteration.
Yes. No doubt. This wouldn't even be an issue for us to discuss had we continued to build out as we should have. We'd have an abundance of nuclear power across this country, safe, efficient nuclear power that would make this a non-issue. But instead, we acquiesce to the nutcases who honestly don't want humans on the planet. I mean, these are the same people that don't think we should inhabit the planet. Man, oh man. But the worm is turning, and it looks positive with respect to that, with lots of announcements of new nuclear projects and many of these big data center operators talking about for their future plans, including use of small modular reactors behind the grid to power their facilities. I don't think there's any question that that's coming. Too much momentum going on there. Remember when Obama said you didn't create your business, sat on the C Spire text line. Man, do I ever remember. That thing is in response to me saying you got to have ideas, of course, and a solid business plan and strategy, but you also got to have a lot of fortitude and a lot of appetite for risk. If you don't, it's not for you. But thank God there are a lot of people in this country that relish that love that idea of going out and putting everything on the line and taking that risk, but also understanding that if they succeed, they will be rewarded. That's the way it should work. And that's what has made this country so incredibly fabulous from an economic perspective. And anytime
this country is so economically strong that you don't even have to have a completely novel idea.
It's true.
To hit it big. It can be a derivative of another good idea. But as long as it's serving a need for enough people or a want for enough people, you're going to make it.
Yeah, and the market will dictate that. The market will make the nod on that. It's real simple. And if the market likes it, they're going to spend their money. And if they spend their money, you're going to be fine. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's just sensing some human need and addressing that issue and that problem. The left's so focused on, we got a pie, let's just cut it differently. It's really just they're into redistribution. Well, we should be focused on, hey, what can we create? And what can government do to make sure they don't impede and stifle such creations and innovation? Rather than, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. They wallow in that you can't do, you can't have mindset. Man, speaking of which, old Zoran Mondani, he's picked up an endorsement from an he, of course, the socialist/communist/Marxist
candidate. He's got to do something after that pathetic bench press attempt.
My gosh.
His poll numbers plummeted after that.
That was dumb. Seems like you know whether or not you could lift that 135 pounds of bar and bell bar deal, weights, until you did that. No, but he gets out there with everybody's camera on him and has to have someone assist him in that effort. He's picked up a big endorsement, none other than Bill de Blasio, the former Marxist mayor of New York City, has said that he's all in for Mondani because he's talking about the issues that matter. So you got a big one there. We need him because in his heart and in his bones, he cannot accept a city that prices out the people who built it and keep it running. Yeah, so more government intervention will fix that problem.
Especially with such novel concepts as buying in bulk for the state-run grocery store.
That's right. Also in politics, Joni Ernst, you know her, the senator from the great state of Iowa, says she will not seek re-election. Comes as a bit of a surprise. She's been there 2 terms, I think. Not going to go at it again. We're watching also closely the governor's race in Virginia. And the Democrat there has a double-digit lead. Winsome Sears, the current lieutenant governor, the Republican candidate, trails the Democrat, who's got some former baggage, by the way, I noted. But that's one that a lot of folks are paying attention to. And at this point, the Republican needs to make up some ground. Seems like in the early 70s, we were supposed to be converted to the metric system by 1980. Yeah, I remember a lot of discussion about that, but it didn't happen. We're still not there.
We'll never be there.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Because it serves a better purpose to just learn both.
I would agree. I would agree with that. The Department of Transportation nationwide is falling behind in making the interstate system match traffic demands. Go up the East Coast on I-95 and the right lane is back-to-back 18-wheelers. Yes, same is true in the congested areas of California as well.
Another example of government dragging its feet.
No doubt.
What's the bridge that still hadn't been rebuilt?
Yeah, in Baltimore. Coming right back. Stay with us.
Gerard Gibert. Going beyond the headlines, breaking down the stories that matter to Mississippi. Middays with Gerard on SuperTalk Mississippi.
I do believe in you, and I know you believe in me. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But now we realize love's not all that it's supposed to be. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Chicago. Stronger every day, bumping us into this final segment of Middays. Kurt from Columbus asks, what is the connection between the unions and the DEI programs? Some have embraced DEI and sort of incorporated that into their agenda, if you will. Some haven't. It really varies. The teachers' unions in particular, because they're mostly composed of liberals and leftists who are all in and embracing the whole concept of DEI. That's where you see a lot of that. No doubt. Let's see.
I mean, both could be said to have used their apparatus to stop the firing of less than worthless employees.
Yes. I agree. And that's probably the biggest problem overall with the unions is they just make it virtually impossible for the employer to terminate someone for almost any reason whatsoever. Yes, Thomas and Greenwood, Governor Glenn Youngkin of the state of Virginia, who I think has done a great job, is term limited. That is correct. You can serve a term, wait, and then serve another term in Virginia. You cannot serve 2 consecutive terms. Thus, the Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears. Did I get that right? Is that her name? Yeah. Sometimes I reverse it inadvertently.
Yeah, Earl Sears.
Yep. She is the Republican candidate. I can see the lady. I think her name's Amy, the blonde-headed Democrat that's running against her. And they've been trading barbs, have they, on the campaign. And the last I checked,
Abigail Spanberger.
Abigail. Okay, I said Amy. I knew it was an A. So there you go. Yeah, he was a good one. I agree, Thomas. Maybe he can run for Congress. Yeah, I'm not sure if he has any interest in that. That would be interesting. Speaking of budgets, how about the Highway 90 bridge between Mississippi and Louisiana? Louisiana is responsible for it, and they won't replace it. We should start asking our state reps if they are putting pressure on Louisiana to get it done. That's Mark from Gulfport. Interesting. Let's see. I got pulled over my first trip to Canada for speeding. I got a lesson on the conversion from kilometers per hour to miles per hour, speaking of the metric system. Oh, my gosh. I wish they would do away with federal income tax and go to a federal sales tax. That's on the C Spire tax line. Been discussed for years. Don't see it ever happening, honestly. It's considered regressive, which means that a lot of people who currently don't pay any income tax would suddenly see an increase in their tax burden by paying sales taxes because they're definitely buying stuff. Federal sales taxes, that is. But I hear you. I personally believe that taxing consumption is more efficient. It's considered a more conservative economic policy than taxing income. That's considered a disincentive to work and producing. We, of course, here in the state of Mississippi have eliminated the income tax. It will take a few years, but we're slowly but surely on our way. Already we've reduced it a considerable amount from the legislation that passed in 22. So there you go. William and Brandon said, I'm pretty sure that the Brandon Police Department doesn't chase these motorcycles that are speeding like bats out of hell for public safety reasons. I just wish they'd stop, honestly. It's mind-boggling to me we don't see more big-time crashes as a result of these guys. What looks like they're going 150 to me. I may be exaggerating. All I know is when they go by me, it's so fast, I feel like I'm sitting still, and I'm doing 65. So it's a concern. I got to get this in there. And it concerns the DEI and the wokeness that has engulfed the country, but fortunately is on the retreat. And this comes from the University of California at Santa Barbara. Just another example of a completely worthless class. And this isn't unique to California, as you know, Rhino. We have completely worthless classes in higher ed here in Mississippi as well. But here's one, and this is a course that is taught in environmental science.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Traditional ecological knowledge, which incorporates Native American viewpoints and customs with respect to the environment. The class has students create a land acknowledgement. Very important. You knew that was you knew that was coming. And
gotta have the woke opening prayer.
And develop a, quote, plant relative opinions on the integration of indigenous knowledge with science are mixed. Some scholars see benefits, while others argue that cultural belief should not replace science in widely accepted methodology.
Conquered, not stolen.
We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.